Okay, here we are. Hi, Amanda. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to hear what you have to share today because I think you just have a really powerful story, and I'm so impressed by the different women that I get to interview and the different backgrounds that you come from and the things that we've overcame. And so I'm really thankful you're here.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Good. So I'd like you to just go ahead and share with our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yes, so my name's Amanda Kendall. I'm from the Denver, Colorado area. I am the owner of Elevating Profits. I come from a very extensive background in tax and accounting and have a passion, as you'll hear here in a little bit, for helping business owners overcome some of the financial obstacles and the glass ceilings that we hit in our business that just kind of naturally, we're all going to hit them, but we may not all naturally know how to overcome them and move to the next level.
So it is natural to hit them.
Oh, yes. I feel like you break through one and there's another one and then there's another one. So, yes, it's very natural to hit them. It's just figuring out how to break through them and keep the momentum going.
Okay, good. I think as business owners, we can feel kind of alone sometimes, or I don't know about you, but I look at other business owners and I think, oh, they must be doing so much better than me. And I don't know why I think that, but I just make that assumption naturally. So it's nice to hear that we all have that stuff. And thank you so much for being here to help us overcome it.
Yeah, I think we all do kind of think everybody else is doing better, but I think it's just a natural thing, especially as women, that we just kind of assume like we're always comparing ourselves to someone else, and we need to stop that.
I agree. So before we jump into your story, can you just tell us what your intention with sharing it is today?
Yes, so my intention today, I talk to women business owners all the time. And I think one of the most common things I hear is I'm not good at that. And that being that specific thing that we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. But really, I just want to help women business owners understand that, that thing, the money, the math piece of your business, just because you're not good at math doesn't mean that you can't have a business that is profitable and paying you and that you thrive in and you love, and just really helping business owners to understand there is a way to overcome that glass ceiling for you.
Very good. Well, I'm a writer, which means that, well, I don't know what it means to you, but to me, it means I was always good in English and always terrible in math. So I really appreciate those of you skilled in the area of finance and numbers, and I'm excited to learn from you today. So let's just jump in. Tell me your story that you want to share with the audience today.
Okay, yes. So as I said, I come from an extensive background of tax and accounting work, 16 plus years to be exact. I started my first business almost 8 years ago now. And when I started it, it was handed to me on a silver platter, more or less. I was working for a gentleman who didn't want to continue in business. He was ready to retire, kept me on his payroll for a year, and basically spoon fed me the business over a year. So I didn't have a lot of those initial startup woes that business owners seem to have in that sense. And I took it for granted. Business was great. The revenue was coming in. I was taking a consistent paycheck pretty much from the beginning. And then one day I just stopped paying attention to that piece of my business. I stopped monitoring what revenue was coming in, where money was being spent. I stopped monitoring what my staff was doing and how that was impacting my bottom line, how they were benefiting the bottom line. I just really lost control of the financial piece of my business, and it nearly ruined me. I went 10 months without a paycheck. I was robbing Peter to pay Paul, swiping my personal debit card at the grocery store, just hoping and praying as I was standing in line that it would go through and I wouldn't be turned away. Just really struggled, and that 10th month hit, and I just remember waking up one day and being like, enough is enough. Like, something's got to give. This is not how business is supposed to be. I'm not supposed to be working 80 plus hours a week, not taking a paycheck, barely making ends meet when I'm bringing in 6+ figures of revenue into my business. And so I locked myself in my office. If you ask anybody who knew me at that time, they'll say for pretty much 2 days straight, I came out for like bathroom breaks and coffee and like a little bit of food here and there, but pretty much for 2 days straight, I locked myself in my office and I looked at all of the data. And when I'm saying data, it's not just the number piece, but I did look at the numbers, but I looked at the clients. I looked at what we were doing, what we were offering, how we were doing it. Like I tore apart the data piece of my business and realized where some of those tweaks needed to be to improve things. After being in my business, or after locking myself in for 2 days, I made a lot of tweaks for what most people would probably seem really fast, but I knew I had a very short window to improve my business or I had to go get a job. So I did exactly that. I looked at certain data points. I did things in my business. I made the numbers work for me. I made the math work to my advantage in business. And that was 3 years ago now. And I'm still sitting here today. I'm actually getting ready to sell that business. I own another business. I co-own a second business at this point. And I really just bring that experience, that near failure, and oh my gosh, I hate that word, but that near failure for me fueled me in a way that I don't think anything else ever could have in business. And it allowed me to realize that I'm a numbers nerd, I'm a math geek, I live in an accounting world, and I let this happen to my business. It's not that it happened to my business, I let it happen to my business by not tracking what I should have been tracking. And it really just made me realize that if I could let that happen to my business, I could only imagine what else could happen to people that don't come from that background. And I kind of made it my personal mission at that point that that was not okay to me. I don't think business owners should live in that world of fear of how the bills are going to be paid, how they're going to pay their mortgage because their business isn't thriving.
Right. And I remember when you and I had talked before, you had gotten pretty far upside down.
I was sitting, so it was August of 2016, and I remember the numbers so clear. Like I closed my eyes, I can see that profit and loss report, and I was over $40,000 in the hole.
Right. And you had told me that you had been, and you mentioned it now too, that you had been working and running in the business for about a year before you started to go down. Is that right? Or
no, so I had been running the business at that point for almost 5 years. I had 4 really great years that I just took for granted.
Right.
And then in that year 5, I made a couple choices that just took me from this trajectory to this one. And like looking back, it wasn't overnight, but being in that situation, it literally felt like it was overnight. Like I went from okay to not in the blink of an eye.
Okay. And so for someone like me who's not really a numbers person, I can't even wrap my head around what it would mean to be in my office for 2 days straight looking at numbers. Tell me, what were you looking at specifically? What should we be watching?
So I think the first thing I looked at was my pricing. Was I charging enough to actually be able to pull myself out of this hole? And that's at that point with those 2 days in my office, that's really all I could think of. I couldn't think long term. I couldn't think of where I was going to be 2 to 3 years down the road. It was literally, how do I fix this and get myself out of this hole that I have dug for myself? So the first thing I looked at was pricing. And that's what I realized was I had, unbeknownst to me at the time, because I wasn't paying attention to it, my staff had started charging less to make the sale. They had started giving people discounts because they were paid commission on sales. And so they were reducing prices without me really realizing it was going on so that they could get commission. So now not only were they reducing my prices, but they were still getting paid on the sale. And so it was cutting my profit margins down even lower than they already had been. So that was the first thing I looked at. The second thing I looked at was my expenses. Where I was spending money, what I was spending money on, who I was spending money on in my staff, and really looking. And I mean, it came down to necessary, not necessary. And at that point, if it did not fall in that necessary category, it was done. So those were probably the two biggest things I looked at. And then I looked, the third thing, which comes to the data point and not necessarily a numbers piece of it, was where was I spending my time? Because I realized I was doing a lot of things at that point in my business that were not bringing in revenue, that were not driving sales, that were not improving profits. And I cut out everything that was not directly related to that at that time.
I get that. I think about a lot of times when I learn about business finance, I try to apply it to how I run my home because I feel more successful in how I run my home budget because it doesn't seem as complicated as business. But when I look at it, really, all that's happening is in business that's different is different words. It's still the same concepts. So when you say pricing, I think about income. Am I making enough income? And then when I think about expenses, well, I think that's the first place I go, oh, I need to cut expenses at home. Okay, no more daily Starbucks. Not that I ever had that habit, thank goodness. But, I do start to look at the essentials and non-essentials, like you mentioned. And, the third point of how you're spending your time, that's huge too. So 3 really great points there that are really easy to translate from. If we do that at home, we can do that at business too. How do we increase income? Check our pricing. How do we decrease expenses? And are we spending our time doing the most valuable things that we could do?
Yeah,
So
I think those 3 things are the main 3. Like if somebody asked me the top 3 things, that would be the first. I'd like this.
And do you help business owners understand these concepts? Is that part of your role, or is that someone else? Or
Nope. So that is,
how do we get
yeah,
that? How do
that
we
is
learn
what I
this?
do. So I, through Elevating Profits, I am a growth and strategy consultant. And so I really work with business owners based on my experience and my knowledge and my skills to, like I said, to break through that glass ceiling. And so that may be that, they may have a 5 or 6 figure business, but they don't know how to go to that next level. They're working so much already. They don't know how they can physically do more to make more, but they know they can't make more if they can't do more. And it becomes this vicious cycle. So I do work with them in the sense of looking at all of these things. We look at the pricing and is there actually profits built into your pricing? We look at the expenses and what can we cut today immediately that's going to improve our bottom line so we at least have some breathing room. Beyond that, we look at staff. Business owners that have staff, I think all too often their staff is not set up for success. And that's not necessarily the staff's fault or the business owner's fault. It's just a lack of knowing how do I set my staff up to make sure they're benefiting my business and they're not just here to offer a service, but they're actually doing something to improve that bottom line. And so really looking at all of those pieces, and I could talk for hours about everything involved. But yeah, so I do consult with my clients around specifically where are they hitting that glass ceiling and how do we break through that ceiling, go to the next level without it simply being, well, you were working 60 hours, now you're going to work 80, but you're going to have more money.
Right. And this glass ceiling, like you mentioned, is going to be different for different people. What do you think causes that for most people? Is it really just not watching their numbers, or is there something more to it?
I definitely think there's more to it. I think the not watching the data points in the business is a big part of it. As a female, and speaking from my experience, I think a lot of what got me to that glass ceiling was this idea of nobody can do it the way I can. And having this need for control and needing to have my hand in all the pots in my business. I think that leads to it a lot. And so when, as a female, especially when we're in that position, we're like, well, nobody else can do it as good as I can, or I could spend 4 hours training them to do something that's going to take me 20 minutes to do, so I'll just do it myself. But then we create a business that is us dependent. It's us reliant. If we want to take a vacation or we have a family emergency and we need to step away, our business basically stops if we're not there. And so I think that is a self-imposed glass ceiling that a lot of clients I work with put on themselves. And so they get to this point where they're like, I can't physically do anymore. I'm not capable of putting in any more time, any more work hours, any more energy into this. And so I guess this is just where I'm at. And so it becomes a matter of tweaking a few things and getting them to understand that if you're creating a business that is you dependent, you've really just created a glorified job for yourself. If you truly want to create a business, you have to have trust in people, and you have to build up that trust and that confidence in them so that it is not you dependent. And that's how you break through that first glass ceiling, in my opinion.
Very good. And you mentioned that you had been $40,000 in the hole. How did you recover that, and how quickly, and where are you at now?
So that was in August of 2016. When I closed out 2016, I was sitting about $4,600 in the red still. So I did quite a bit that year. A lot of that came from some of those tweaks, like changing my pricing and being very firm with my staff. Like, this is what it is. You don't get to make a decision to change this. Cutting a lot of expenses. And it was really just, I guess, thinning out that year. Like, I was making sure the pricing was what it was, and I cut every expense that was not absolutely necessary to run the day-to-day business. And then today, I am currently sitting with a six-figure profit in that business. And I am actually in the process of selling that business for more than I would have ever thought I would have got for that business.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I think, I don't know, for me, I'll speak for me. That's always the dream, is to be able to build a business to be so profitable that it is able to be sold and you can kind of move on to the next thing. And so I'm inspired by people who do that. So congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. I'd like to know if there's anything else we need to know about this topic, because I think you gave us it's so simple what you gave us, and yet it's very powerful. So what else am I missing that I haven't asked that we need to know?
So I think the one thing that, as business owners, a lot of us tend to overlook is what that end goal truly is for our business. So when I started my business almost 8 years ago, I had no intentions of ever selling it. It was what I was going to retire from. I was just going to work. I wanted to have myself a job and be able to pay my bills. That was my goal. I didn't see beyond the clients that I needed to work with today to create revenues, or what I was doing next week or next month. I never looked big picture. And I think that's the biggest mistake as business owners that we make, is not looking big picture. Had I looked big picture 8 years ago, I don't think I would have ever ended up in the position I was in. So the one thing I would say is start with the end in mind. Look at that exit strategy, that exit plan. And it doesn't have to be, I talk to a lot of people and they're like, I have no clue what that looks like. And I'm like, great, so let's figure it out. It's not set in stone. You're not carving this with a rock into a stone. It's just putting pen to paper of, where do I think I want this to be in the next 5, 10, 15 years? And really imagining, I work with my clients all the time, and I'm like, imagine the perfect business in the perfect world with your perfect life. Like, what does that look like for you? And then work backwards from there, because if you have that end destination, at least an idea of where you want it to be, it's a lot easier to map out and say, okay, I can do this, I can do this. I'm not doing that because that's not getting me to that point at all.
And when you said that you started looking at the activities that you were doing, how much of that was future planning? Like when you were kind of in that hole, where you were mentioning that you didn't do the future planning, did that shift in that whole concept of what you were doing, that you shifted?
Not immediately. And I wish it would have. Looking back, I wish that something would have clicked in my brain at that very moment that said, what is the end goal here? In the moment, all I could literally all I could think of was, how do I get myself out of this hole? Because if I close business today, I've got all this debt and no way of paying it off at all. I mean, I was robbing Peter to pay Paul with business loans at that point. So in the moment, no, I didn't think about that. I think it was about 6 months into the following year that I started to really look at, like, okay, what is this truly going to be for me? What is this? What is the end goal here? And even then, I wouldn't have told you I was going to sell the business. This just really came up about a year ago for me. But so I wish it would have clicked, but in that moment it didn't.
I think that sometimes we can get into a survival mode where we just need to stop digging. And I think that's exactly what you did. You got to the stopping point and you're like, I'm going to stop digging. I'm going to fill this hole back up. And then I think once we do have some stability, it's like it comes with a level of health that allows us to start to see the future. Like when you're down in the hole, you can barely see the light. You have to build it up a bit before you can see that there's light. So I get that. But I really wanted to draw out how important that is, because I think a lot of times we can get so bogged down, and even visually, like if you think about it, if you're just working, you're looking down, you're not really like taking the moment to sit back and dream about what it can be. And I think that this action of looking down and focusing so hard, that's digging our hole.
Yeah. Well, and I had a mentor of mine as I was going through this. So like, as I was starting to realize that there was a problem, I brought in a mentor and a business coach at that point. And I remember something he said, and it has stuck with me ever since. He goes, you have a 5-foot view of your business. You stand up and you can't see anything up here or out here. You just see right here.
Yeah.
This is what you see. He goes, I can see from a 50-foot view. I see what you don't even see. I can predict what you can't even see about to happen, because I'm not in the trenches. And that in the trenches, those words right there just stuck with me. I was like, oh. So I now intentionally take time to step out of the trenches of my business and really try to take that 50,000-foot view of like, okay, like this is the end goal. This was the map. How am I projecting there? How's the journey going to that point? But really, I think, like you said, we get down here and we're stuck in the minutia and the day-to-day activities, and we don't take enough time, I think, to step out into that CEO role and really see what the business is doing as a whole versus just, here's my lane, this is what I'm working on.
Yep, I totally agree. Any final thoughts? I know it's hard when you could talk forever on it, right?
I think the one thing that I would want to still say is, for those of you that tell yourself that you're not good at math, stop. Or that say you don't love math, stop. Because as a business owner, all math is money. And we may not be the best managers of money yet. You will be. You may not be there yet, but it's just like anything else. It doesn't come in one day. You have to work at it, read about it, learn about it. If that is a struggle area in your business, bring in a consultant or a coach that specializes on that side. Read books, watch trainings, do podcasts, like whatever you can do, make that a point of your education in business, and stop using the I am not good at it or I don't enjoy it as an excuse, and make it something that you're really strong at.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, that's one of the bigger hats in business.
Yeah.
It's important. Good. All right. Well, I always end my interviews with a fun question, just to bring in some, more fun. We need more fun in our lives. So my question for you is, do you have any pets?
Oh, yes. I have a house full of pets. So my least favorite pet is my boyfriend's tarantula, Frankie. We have a 80-gallon fish tank full of various fish. And then we have one cat, and we have our variety of dogs. So we have a little long-haired wiener dog named Bo. We have a pit terrier mix named Daisy. And then our puppy is an American bulldog named Hercules.
Very cool. I have a long-haired Chihuahua mix. His name's Ralph.
Yeah, we're kind of dog fanatics. I never would have, had you asked me 10 years ago, I'm like, I'm all about cats, but now I love my dogs.
Yeah. Well, you have a good mix there.
We do.
I would have to agree with you. I'm not a fan of snakes or spiders or rodents. I can do guinea pigs, but anything smaller than a guinea pig, I'm having a hard time with.
So my boyfriend, before he moved in with us, had 2 snakes, and that was one of my things. I'm like,
yeah. No.
Good.
Way to stand your ground on that.
I was like, I can deal with the tarantula. snakes were crossing a boundary.
Yeah, got it. All right. Well, thank you again, Amanda. You gave us some really good stuff to work with today. I have your contact information in the notes so that if anyone needs or wants to get in touch with you, they can. And I hope they do. For all of us who have previously said we're not good at math or previously said that we don't love it, we're learning to because it's important. It's a huge hat in our business.
Oh
So
yeah, and
thank you.
hang out with me long enough and you'll love numbers.
We'll love them because it's money and we all love money.
Yes.
So I love the way that you framed that too. Numbers are just money when it comes to business and we all want that. That's
Yep.
what we're in business for. So thank you so much.
Not a problem, Chris. Thank you.
I hope you have a great day.
You as well. Bye.
Bye-bye.